Okay, 7 o'clock?
Yes.
Begin our meeting with public be heard. I know there's a lot of people here that want to speak out on the issue of criminalizing fracking, and we thought we would give them all a voice first. So Jackie, if you want to recognize them.
I'm here wearing the hat of FrackBustersNY, and with the assumption that Woodstock doesn't want to be fracked based on the excellent work that the WEC and the town board did with land use regulations to that effect. There are 152 towns across New York that have done the same, and many still talking about it. But the gas industry is poised to frack New York. Governor Cuomo's legally in charge of making that decision, and we doubt that he is going to turn down the oil gas industry. And no matter how many New Yorkers oppose it, fracking will proceed basically because it is perfectly legal. On WAMC last week, Dr. Steingraber listed the real results of fracking in other states, from poisoned aquifers to ill children, and because fracking has proved unregulatable. And then Alan Chartock said, well, what if a property owner wants to be fracked? And she said, well, there are lots of things property owners can't do if it's against the public good. For example, you couldn't have a meth lab on your property. And Alan said, but fracking will be perfectly legal. Yep, exactly. Tens of thousands of wells could destroy farming, devastate farming, tourism, wineries, not to mention property values upstate, and it would be legal. And that is our point, the point of FrackBustersNY. We know that the only way to stop fracking's devastation in New York is for New Yorkers to insist that their legislature make it illegal. And people from all over our state have drafted a law to make fracking a Class C felony in New York. I smile, but we are very serious. We request that you pass our resolution to support this state effort to criminalize fracking, and we ask that you put that on the agenda when you can. Thank you.
A few days ago, I received an email entitled, "Support the Separation of Oil and State." Catchy title, though a more accurate one would have been "Support the Separation of Fossil Fuel Corporations and State." Scientists concluded years ago that leakage rates of methane would need to be 2% or less to help avoid catastrophic climate change. A recent NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and University of Colorado Boulder study of fugitive methane emission levels at gas drilling sites in Colorado and Utah reported emissions as high as 9%, confirming what Dr. Robert Howarth and his Cornell colleagues suggested last year. CO2 ppm are currently at more than 390 parts per million, and that's not counting methane, which is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. There's plenty more scientific data. I'll spare you. Given that some of the science is based on data modeling that might be wrong, I ask, are we willing to bet the planet on it? Our federal representatives claim that in the national interest, we must develop the abundance of gas and oil that is now available from hydraulic fracturing. Who dares to ask, what about the precautionary principle? About conservation commensurate with current climate realities? Where's the sane energy policy? Our state and federal representatives, our governor, and our president cannot lead us out of this, unfortunately. They will be spent or spit out of office for even talking about it. So, where are our leaders? Once again, and this time with a great deal more urgency, it's up to us. You, our local leaders, and people like you and me. There are millions of us all over the planet who understand what's at stake.
I've had the opportunity to teach many of your kids, and thank you for this
you have.
opportunity this evening. Most of us live in Woodstock because we love the quality of its light, its fresh air, its streams, its mountains, the beauty of its night sky, its peace and quiet. We think it would be a crime to desecrate this magical haven. Wouldn't it be a crime to introduce dangerous chemicals into the streams and lakes we swim and fish in? Wouldn't it be a crime to dump toxins on the land that supplies our food? And wouldn't it be a crime to spew poisons into the air we breathe? Wouldn't it be a crime for there to be so much late-night noise and bright light that we couldn't sleep? Wouldn't it be a crime if our wild and domestic animals had access to open pits of water laced with toxic chemicals? And wouldn't it be a crime to have thousands of enormous diesel trucks damaging our roads, choking us with their dust, and maddening us with their noise? Wouldn't it be a crime if toxic chemicals were transported and stored in residential areas? And wouldn't it be a crime if our drinking water ignited and our wells exploded and our homes were rendered worthless? Wouldn't it be a crime if our property could be taken by eminent domain, by a corporation building a pipeline? And wouldn't it be a crime if our community's well-being was to be monitored by underfunded, understaffed agencies like the DEC and the EPA, which are primarily designed to serve those same corporations they are monitoring? In our town, our state, in our country, crimes are not regulated by the law. They're punished by the law. We do not regulate domestic violence, nor should we regulate crimes against the earth. Let us, the citizens of Woodstock, take the lead in declaring that hydrofracking is a crime in New York State. Thank you.
Corporate power has rooted into every little thing that we do or spend money on or care about. And fracking is one thing, and it's an important thing, and it's very close to us. But if we can counter the fracking movement, it's very important in this countering corporate power. We are a community and individuals, and we have to stand against corporate power. We must.
Thank you.
Two other facts that may be helpful is that the oil and gas industry is exempt from any chemicals that are hazardous being dealt with or disposed of as hazardous, so that's criminal in my opinion. And also they're dumping radioactive cuttings. The dirt that they pull out of the ground in Marcellus Shale is radioactive, and they're spreading it on farmland and in improperly lined dumps in western New York. And the scientists who are study nuclear leaks all over the country agree that they're even testing with the wrong equipment for radioactivity and saying it's safe. They're testing with a Geiger counter instead of a spectrometer, and they're saying it's safe. So just a couple of more reasons why this is a crime. Thank you.
I think you should definitely and strongly support a criminalization in New York State of fracking, because anyone who would pump xylene, toluene, and methylbenzene and a whole host of 500 other chemicals into the ground, which then will percolate up through the ground, poisoning permanently the ground and the groundwater and the surface water that it reaches, is a criminal act. And there's no way of getting around that. There's no way of regulating that. It's not about well casings. It's not about making leaks that don't leak with pipelines and condensers and other facilities. It's about the process itself. And the man who invented the process came out against it and wished he had never done it. the neurotoxins that are in it are amazing. Things which have been recognized as neurotoxins for 40 or 50 years by OSHA, some of the chemicals I just mentioned, and many others. And it's important to send a strong message to Andrew Cuomo that we do not want this. It's a criminal act. It should be prosecuted as such.
What I don't understand is when I see the different gas stations locally, when they're trying to remove tanks out of the gas stations. We have one locally that no longer serves to provide gas, but does mechanical work. And the state has companies that they work with, and one of them is, I think, C2G is the name of it. And if you get the slightest amount of gasoline, or you get the slightest amount of anything, it's a major to-do with remediation, and trucks come, and all kinds of things happen. And that's for a single site with a single small amount of something. And it's in other places, too, that I see, and they're busy. What would happen if we had hundreds of wells being drilled? And how could we possibly even know of the problem, much less deal with it? And I guess it's your charge and responsibility to see how serious that is. I think it's fairly serious because oops doesn't work.
The science is in. We have excellent non-corrupt science, much of it from New York State. We have Professor Tony Ingraffia out of Cornell, as well as a team of other scientists. The evidence is in. Shame on us if we haven't yet accessed that. We also have great economic information. Dr. Ron Bishop from SUNY Oneonta has pointed out time and again that it's an investment Ponzi scheme and that it is for export. It's not even for our usage. So we know it's criminal, and to allow it to keep perpetuating, I believe, is in itself criminal. So I implore you to please do the right thing and represent us, because it's not hundreds of wells, as Don suggested, it's thousands. Thank you.
We have to teach people, how to react to these kinds of things that are ethical and moral. The corporate world is really only interested in making money. I just keep thinking of, in relation to water, that during several years ago we heard about the Bush family buying a major water aquifer in South America, 60,000 acres of land with the largest water aquifer, one of the largest in the world. And they already know that we're destroying our water resources, and they're going to be selling water because we're going to pollute our waters.
I wasn't going to speak tonight. I came spontaneously, but I do believe that fracking should be criminalized. We don't need it. I just heard on NPR as I was driving to the community center that the Earth's temperature rose 1 degree in the last year. Never before in the history, science recorded history, has the Earth's temperature risen as much as quickly. There are so many alternative ways to create jobs and to seek solutions to energy use. And, I believe that's where we as a society should be looking. But I also strongly believe that fracking is a dangerous, toxic business.
Moving on. A resolution in support of a law to criminalize the technology of hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas and all activities related to it. This resolution is in support of New York Public Law 1, a law to criminalize hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas and all related activities, is submitted for public discussion and official endorsement in the towns and villages, cities, and counties throughout New York State. One basis for this act of criminalization rests on Chapter 40, Title A of the New York State Penal Code, which states, quote, the general provisions of this chapter are, A, to prescribe, make illegal conduct which unjustifiably and inexcusably causes or threatens substantial harm to individuals or public interests. B, to give fair warning of the nature of the conduct prescribed and the sentences authorized upon conviction. C, to ensure the public safety by preventing the commission of offenses through deterrent influences of the sentences authorized, the rehabilitation of those convicted, and their confinement when required in the public interest, close quote. Whereas to prohibit the industrial technology known as hydraulic fracturing or hydrofracking for oil and gas and all activities that surround and support such technology, and Whereas hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas is a shale gas and oil extraction procedure designed and perpetuated by business corporation directors exercising rights, powers, and decision-making authority never granted to corporate entities by the people. And whereas the rights of the people, especially with regard to their health and safety, are supreme, and their rightful decision-making authority must take precedence over the privileging of corporations by federal and state legislators, executives, and judges. And whereas the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Division of Mineral Resources is mandated, quote, to authorize and to provide for the operation and development of oil and gas properties in such manner that a greater ultimate recovery of oil and gas may be had, close quote, and therefore is not mandated, making it incapable to protect people, their communities, or their natural environments. And whereas destructive impacts to water, air, land, local economies, housing resources, roadway infrastructure, and public health are significant and well documented, and whereas all bans and moratoria on hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas are not true prohibitions accompanied by deterrent-level penalties, subject as they are to the vast discretionary authority of the Department of Environmental Conservation officials appointed by the governor or executive office agencies, and whereas bans, moratoria cannot guarantee prohibition of the many related activities that can be imposed on communities, including but not limited to water withdrawals, importing, dumping of oil and gas hydraulic fracturing wastes, and operation of already permitted hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas wells, and whereas it is necessary to move beyond past focus on the techniques and harms of drilling toxic chemicals, corporate poisoning of water, and the like, and strongly assert the people's authority to decide the circumstances of energy production in our state and nation, thereby placing such decision-making where it belongs in any real democracy, in the will of the governed. And whereas a law to criminalize hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas with appropriate penalties is unlikely to originate in the legislature or from our state officials, it is incumbent upon the people of the state to instruct our legislators to introduce and enact this law. Therefore, be it resolved that hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas and all related activities shall be illegal in New York State as antisocial and anti-ecological behaviors. And be it further resolved that all corporate directors or public officials committing or enabling hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas or related activity shall be penalized commensurate with their violation of the law. And be it further resolved that as self-governing people, it is our responsibility to make the rules and write the laws by which we shall be governed. And therefore, be it finally resolved that the town of Woodstock and the state of New York supports the passage of New York Public Law Number 1 and instructs the Woodstock town clerk to send a certified copy of this resolution urging enactment of said law to our legislators in the Assembly and the Senate, along with a copy of New York Public Law Number 1.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous.